This Delhi that we uphold is an imaginary. It doesn't exist. And we go back and we sort of, वहीं से we retrieve material and we sing. And we sing with conviction and we sing in hope. The camera on? Okay.
Mama, take this gun away from me. I can't use it anymore. It's getting dark, too dark to see. Feel like I'm knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock,
Knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Thank you very much, first of all, for thinking of the city sounds. I'm reminded of a book, in fact, a couple of books that had come out in the early 50s from Kolkata. And one of the books was about the sounds of Kolkata, and the other was about the smells of Kolkata. Of course, those sounds and smells don't exist anymore, and things have moved on. Delhi is a comparable city, in fact, far more comparable than we think. And it has become a kind of a city which has a kind of a stable character, but it also has, it has also evolved as a transit city. So people come here and they move on. If we are looking at Delhi in these two, in this paradoxical conjunction of stability and of historical stability and of existential transit. So this is something deeply fascinating. And this is how I would like to believe this is how this group has evolved. And if you're looking at four of us, then it's both a convergence, which is multi-religious, if I may put it like that, multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic, and therefore in practice also sort of it's absorbing, it is assimilating a lot. But it's not just a convergence, it's also a journey. So Delhi, in fact, represents in its memory a kind of, at times troubled, but at also very happy convergence of multiple cultures that have happened over centuries, actually. And also the dispersals. And if you're looking at this group that way, and I'm never tired of overstating this cliche, and the cliche is that we have Panditji, the youngest member of the group, who's come from Kolkata, and his mother tongue is Bangla. And he has come to Delhi from Kolkata to train under a Muslim maestro. So that's fascinating in itself. Then we have Mr. Deepak Castilino. Mr. Deepak Castilino, unlike Pandit Pritam Ghosal, he's a Delhiite, but his parents, they belong to the Konkan region. So that's a kind of other kind of thing that has happened in Delhi. But of course, he doesn't speak Konkani. He doesn't speak Marathi. His basic language remains English. And he's trained in Western classical music. He's a Christian. So we have a Hindu and we have a Christian. And then we have Ustad Amjad Khan Sahab. He is a thoroughbred Delhiite, and his family has been staying here in Delhi now for about 6, 7, or maybe more than that centuries. And his religion and his mother tongue. His mother tongue is what is known as Hindustani. You might call it Rekhta, you might call it Urdu, you may call it a mix of Urdu and Hindi. So that's what he is. I am a part of a displaced family that has come from Lahore. So my own sort of, upbringing is in a refugee colony. So Delhi therefore becomes a kind of not one but many cities in that sense, multiple cities, like we all are. But Delhi has, over centuries opened up this kind of a possibility where our stability exists, but that stability is also transient. So in the process, we remain both stable and we also change. Now, this is something about Delhi that has not stopped happening. So when we are looking at Delhi and therefore and our struggles, then it's deeply fascinating how we all have become the other. Because there is an otherness which we look at with suspicion, but we are also seduced by that otherness. So when I was born in Punjab, I landed up in Delhi as a child, and it is a refugee colony where everyone is suspicious of everyone else. Because within Punjab, the people who are coming from various parts of Punjab, they're speaking different dialects. And they belong to different caste structures. And therefore, they are deeply suspicious. But with the new generation, when we children are born, and we are playing games, and games are all melodic games. Because we don't have money to buy toys, to buy gadgets. So we innovate games. So innovation is another very, very strong thing which informs Delhi. Delhi started sort of, spreading after the partition. So the Punjabis, they started forming a kind of an outskirt of the city, which was within the walled cities. Walled cities had itself started, spreading out towards, let's say, Delhi University. So that's one kind of, the traders, for instance, the Jains, the Agrawals, the Srivastavas. These people had started going towards the civil lines. And there is another part of the Muslim community that has started going towards Ajmal Khan Park, Faiz Road, and you had Tibia College, and so on and so forth. And then the refugees. Refugees bring in their own culture. So there are new sounds. Prior to that, you had basically the caste sounds. The entire culture was that. Singing was that. But when my people came from, let's say, Lahore and other parts, they brought in new sounds. And those new sounds started informing Delhi in a way in which the Delhiites had not imagined it would ever, exist like that. So Delhi changed overnight. So we have been, all of us, trying to explore these sounds. And our music actually has a lot to do with the thread, which is the moving thread. And how that moving thread, finally becomes a fabric. It gets woven into a fabric. And in fact, we have a song which goes back to the 16th century. And it is about the moving thread. It's about sharing. How do we share? In terms of sounds, what are the sounds that we've shared? All kinds. If I go to Delhi University in 1968-69, already there is this, students' unrest happening all over the world because of the Vietnam War. And there is all kind of music which is happening. which is also influencing and impacting the students who are now new entrants to the university. So you have, Bob Dylan, and you have, the Beatles, and you have Pete Seeger, you have all kinds of people who are standing up and saying no to the war. I come from a background which is a Hindi school background. So my English wasn't very good when I entered the university. So I was looking with awe at all the songs that were happening in Delhi School of Economics. And then I was thinking, Acha Madan, how would you respond? So I begin to look at my own cultural past and memory. And I started finding songs from there. I start translating songs. Let me say that I bring in the Punjabi component. सांभला नीलाम कर पुत दीन शाने सांभला नीलाम कर पुत दीन शानी सानू रही ना हुण एदी कोई दो रही ना हुण कोई लो रात कलैनी कुछ नजर ना आवे रात कलैनी कुछ नजर ना आवे सुरगा दर मेरे तेरी को also brought in other sounds which didn't exist in Delhi. Let me put it like that. These were very new songs, very new sounds. For instance, there are certain riffs and chords that are happening for the first. I'm maybe I'm overstating the case, but for instance, Panditji, there is that riff of Sakhya. Yeah. How did that? Now this is. Sakhya 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 ho Sakhya Baghar sabse सखिया बाघर सबसे जहाँ पूर्ण पुरुष हमारा सखिया सखिया हो. This kind of sound that we are experimenting with, and of course, it's also about the possibility of a new home. So we are in Delhi, and we are reinterpreting Kabir. And we are reinterpreting Kabir not as when we say, Jahan Puran Purush Hamara. Puran Purush is not the complete man. Puran Purush is, I mean, if you go back to the etymology, Puran Purush is the unbroken conscience. And in Delhi, where there is always so much of stress, and initially it was a very nice city, you could go wherever you wanted. Now it is a very crowded city, and you're looking for the unbroken conscience in a space where the spaces of cultural dialogue are becoming more difficult. In the sense, the space that existed 3 months ago, the pace of development is such that within 3 months it's gone. So you had what we call addas, where we'll sit over a cup of tea and we'll have intense discussions. Those spaces are gone. I remember as a child going to a playground and indulging in a kind of a community activity, which could be anything. It could be games, it could be sports, which would be singing together. All that is becoming it's going away. Hardly any space left where we can put our foot and say that we exist culturally and as a community. There is too much of stress. So we have to look for spaces of happiness. So how do we do that? So we have to reinterpret the old. And how do we do that? For instance, again from Kabir. Just 1 minute. Anand. This is about the return of the cycles. Delhi had different kinds of fruit, had different kind of seasons. Now all seasons become muddled. The fruit no longer exists, and therefore the cycle of seasons is also, in a manner of speaking, lost. Just see this, and sing with us if you want to. It's a, what is this? This is like recreating the city in terms of nostalgia. How intensely we felt or revisited this city became obvious to us when Corona hit us. For 3 years, we were not going out. There was no community music that was happening. We were sitting home and we were pondering all that we had lost. All that we had created became also object of critical gaze. What are the new sounds possible? Sitting in 4 different spaces, we were doing that, exchanging something that we'll create, then either we'll reject it or we'll work on that. So, in that sense, and that is also the time when we discovered that all the music that we have done and all the spiritual traditions that we had explored had singularly failed to engage with pandemics. Pandemics is something that has been happening in our history, and yet our traditions did not engage with that, at least not musically and not poetically. So that was also the time when we were very intensely thinking of how, if possible, we can at least address questions of how, A, we had completely destroyed our ecology. I mean, if you go to the borders of Delhi, how many mountains are there, Deepak bhai, of garbage?
Tons and tons.
Huh?
Lots of garbage.
And these mountains they keep collapsing, and we don't know. I mean, as human beings, what are we? We are a garbage producing species who is completely unaware of how we have to deal with that. So we are consuming without being responsible. These 3 years that went by also created this awareness very intensely. What have we done to our mountains? What are we doing to this cover of sort of ice? What are we doing to our water, which is fast depleting? These were important issues in Delhi.
About the kind of music we did during the pandemic. It was kind of music which was created in empty spaces. It's very interesting what he may have thought of, composed, what you may have composed, what Amjad added, what I added, didn't come from interaction. This was not a band or a group which gets together and has a couple of snacks and refreshments and plays music together. This was a group which was very isolated. And the kind of music that comes out of that during the pandemic is also a sound of the city.
Absolutely.
Very interesting to look at that aspect as well. Music doesn't stop.
The music traveled across borders, across regions and states. So that way it was possible for during the pandemic time, due to the technology, we recorded, we sent, and we collaborated. Lots of collaborations happened, much more than, because it is not always possible to go to a city and meet people and sit and make music. But this, with the help of the technologies.
I mean, thanks to technology, it was possible. Pritam has also done some work with some musicians in the US, and they've come out with some stuff.
And so they are bringing their city sounds to us. We are sending our city sounds to them.
Right.
We had a horrible time. This gentleman was in hospital for how many?
7 days.
No, 10 days.
10 days.
In ICU.
And he almost died.
Yes.
It was quite bad. But the music survived. So that is also a sound of a city, The sound of music in the city, whatever the circumstance.
We thought that, we'd become like a haunted city where how many friends we lost? I mean, I can count any number. Some of them very young. That was the time when we had to sort of, something And we didn't know how to make sense. For instance, there was a song that we had done at a particularly sad moment in the history of our city, but then we revisited this. Duhai Ali, Duhai Ali. We saw them leaving their houses, just walking. People with nothing, with very little on them, just one bag. A child a toddler trying to revive his dead mother. I mean, and we're sitting in our houses here. Duhai Ali, Duhai Ali. Antariano Vaja Mara Kidhar gaye ho, kidhar gaye ho. बाज तुहाने बहुत उजाड़ा किधर गए हो किधर गए हो दुहाई अली दुहाई अली Duhai Ali, Duhai Ali, Duhai Ali. This, when I saw these people going and walking and just walking, going, where were they going? They were going from Delhi to houses where no one was waiting them. No one was waiting for them. So imagine going back to a house where you have to put everything together. You have no source of income there. You have to somehow survive. And this is the kind of melody that is coming in our mind. And we are crying actually when we do this. So Delhi is not a city without empathy. The desire in groups such as these, and I'm sure there are many more such groups, where people actually for the first time got into a reflective mode, thinking, what is it that keeps our music hopefully together? There's a term which has been used by Jean-Paul Sartre. It's called engagé, to be engaged. So, this is the kind of music that we've done now. Deepak Bhai and I, we've been together for
30 years.
30 years. And this is one group that has never broken up. At times I wonder, Deepak Bhai, how is it that we have not broken up? Although we severely criticize our own music. It's not as if we don't. When we give a bad concert, and there are quite a few, then in the evening, Panditji will say, Madan, Chacha, what was this? Where was the music? Where was the soul? Where is the ruh? So,
Delhi also can have I mean, I hate to say this, but sometimes Delhi can be frivolous. It's a city which takes all kinds of music, accepts all kinds of music, but can be frivolous sometimes. Unlike other cities, I don't want to mention the names of those cities. There are other places where a certain kind of music is appreciated. Here we have gotten too happy sometimes. That too happy is not necessarily the best music that comes out of that. But that's why the pandemic, I feel, that really brought out some of the nicest music. It's also interesting, how for the young people, we're all hippies suffering from a colonial hangover. Colonial hangover. And you thought you were very smart and all that because you listened to the Beatles and you spoke in English and you went to English schools and English colleges or whatever. And a certain kind of music. But in the last 30 years, at least 30 years, you had Hindi film songs which were essentially based on Western themes, moving away from the rag. Like things like Khambe jaise khadi hai, something hai, phool jhadi hai. And I remember thinking of that song and thinking, my God, that's just a rock and roll song. Maybe, but they use that style. And today, kids are making their own songs, maybe with different styles, different genres. Okay? But the fact is that they're thinking for themselves. They're not just singing a film song. They're writing their all original lyrics, maybe with a Western feel.
but these things were coming, even when we were growing up. I'll give you an example of Delhi again. So Delhi was a haunted city after partition. And if you look at the history of Indian cinema, the Muslim socials had disappeared. The Sufi registers had disappeared. So how were they kept alive? For instance, there's this, ये रात भीगी भीगी ये मस्त नजारे उठा धीरे धीरे वो चांद प्यारा प्यारा उठा धीरे धीरे वो चांद प्यारा प्यारा is from the 17th century Sufi poet Hazrat Sultan Babu. This is how they kept these things alive. So what is our colonialism? We are colonized by our memory of our traditions, spiritual traditions. And that's a happy colony. I don't know how happy this colony is, but people have
But see,
converted
the
it.
songs, like for instance, a lot of songs you say, oh, that's an English song. But there was a reason for that. The Hindi film industry also employed a lot of Goan musicians who came into Bombay to make a better living than living in Goa. In fact, Naresh Fernandez wrote a lovely book on this, Taj Mahal Foxtrot, And he talks about all these Chick Chocolate people whom H.D. Burman or the other directors invited to make music. And all their compositions are in Western time signatures. You have a waltz, Ajib Dastan hai ye, or you have or the sugar in the morning, dil dekha dekho, dil dekha dekho. You had all these kind of songs.
Absolutely.
Where they were not really fusion songs. They were just
Absolutely.
using Western melodies, Western instruments to create Hindi film songs.
They also went to Lahore. See, this is very interesting that these gone musicians went to Lahore. They stayed there for a long time. They influenced the film music in the 40s in Lahore. After the partition, many of them shifted to Delhi. I still remember in Karol Bagh, the first restaurant that came up was Belga Restaurant. In Belga Restaurant, you had these Goanese musicians who would come and perform every evening. And we used to look through the windows at these ladies and, they had these huge instruments, double bass and cello and guitars, and they're performing. Our imagination was ignited, sort of, and I'm sure they were, these musicians were performing in those restaurants that existed at that time. Laguna, for instance, there was one restaurant
There was
called
Volga, there was York. In Calcutta, there was Twinkle.
They were performing
there.
So, I mean, the influences were varied and just fantastic. And, also, Goanese had taken a lot of this from the Portuguese.
Yeah.
So, there is if that's a colonial thing, that's a different kind of a colonial thing. So these colonies, the colonies of mind consist of a very large range. Your memory itself is a colony. We are all, and I always say this, we are not one text. We are a multiplicity of many texts. All of us. ये भूल जाइए that I am a Sardar and therefore I am a Sikh and all that I know is my gurus and I'll say Asi Jatto ne ji. So I'll put my this thing on my rather thin sort of mustaches and then I'll sort of say, we are Punjabis and balle balle and all that. Arey bhai, I am telling you, in Delhi when I'm looking at these South Indians as a young boy, I'm so fascinated because of this program which was happening on Vivid Bharati in the afternoon of Carnatic music. And you had singers like Ghantasala and S. Janaki, Saukar Janaki and others. And I'm listening to the songs. And listening to the songs, I think of the South Indians as very sophisticated people, and I want to engage with them. They became some of my best friends. Were from South India. My wife is a South Indian. That was possible also because of the cultural mix that we were living in. So Delhi had that possibility. My sons, for instance, taught me a kriti by Purandar Dasa in Delhi. This is amazing, a kriti about returning the lake's water to the lake.
Everyone is like Sufi and Bollywood. They want to sing Sufi. Sufi is like only one artist they call it Sufi, like Nusrat Fateh Ali Saab. So आप उनके गाना गाइए और आप सूफी सिंगर बन जाइए. And then in other hand you sing some Bollywood songs, and then you are done.
There's no other music.
There's
You
no
are a
other
star.
music happening
You
these
are a
days,
star.
especially in Delhi. So there are many bands occurred, and they're doing the same stuff. And I think somehow people also like, why? Because everyone is working so much. They got tired at the end of the day, so they want to enjoy. They want to feel
It's
happy.
also the Hindi film industry.
So I think जो अभी बात हो रही थी कि दिल्ली के जो ऑडियंस है, they want happy, everything happy, because क्योंकि उनका भी प्रॉब्लम है, सारे दिन आप काम कर रहे हैं, इतना स्ट्रेस है आपके ऊपर, इतना प्रॉब्लम्स है, सो यू वांट टू फील गुड. अब शाम को कुछ अच्छा चाहिए यार, which makes you feel happy, which makes you feel dance. So I think इस वजह से भी बहुत सारे, लेकिन और दूसरी अच्छी बात ये है, हाँ, अच्छी बात ये है कि बहुत सारा म्यूजिक हो रहा है.
किसी जमाने में गजल का वो रिवाज काफी था.
गजल का बहुत ज्यादा रिवाज, अभी नहीं है इतना.
अभी नहीं है ना.
अभी इतना
गजल.
I mean, कुछ ऐसा हो गया कि अभी पूरा गजल का जो जॉनर है वो सारा बॉम्बे शिफ्ट हो गया है. Somehow अभी बॉम्बे में गजल ज्यादा हो रही है.
But you are also working towards reviving the ghazal scene.
Yes, I have a project called Kahani Ghazal Ki. I'm really seriously working with that. So it's like 125 years of travel of ghazal from Persia to India.
Today morning, we were discussing whether the age of maestros is over. And you look around. Do you have new maestros coming up? It's a question worth pondering. So there is now, what is happening is, there are two ways in which knowledge grows. One is the root, the kind of depth. The other is the tuberous growth of knowledge, where we have we go from surface to surface. That link of depth is going away, and now the knowledge is mostly tuberous. So when it is becoming like that, when we are faced with dispersals, what are the things that we can actually save? It's a very, very serious question. This question is actually the question. Otherwise, what is happening is that our old, there is a fight going on for legacy, whether we like it or not. What we have created in terms of ideas, in terms of creative productivity, there is a fight going on for that. And those who will sort of, stay close to that. I'm not a trained musician. I become a musician because I was disturbed. So my thing is different from theirs. These people have, I don't know how many, they have spent an entire lifetime not just learning music, but also engaging with that music, which is now getting lost.
मैं दिल्ली घराने से हूँ. आज भी हम अपना कोशिश कर, मेरा बच्चा है, मैं उसको इसराज सिखा रहा हूँ. इसराज कोई बजाता नहीं है. मेरे वालिद साहब बजाते थे, उसके बाद मेरे छोटे भाई बजा रहे हैं, अब कोई है ही नहीं बजाने वाला. मेरी वाइफ मुझसे कहती है कि आप इतने अच्छे तबला प्लेयर हो, अपने बच्चे को तबला नहीं सिखा रहे हो. मैं डरता हूँ कि वो जो लेगेसी है, वो जो इंस्ट्रूमेंट पे जो जितना मेहनत हो चुकी है, वो सब जीरो हो जाएगी. एटलीस्ट मेरा बेटा उसको समझे, सीखे, उसको रिसर्च करे, तो कम से कम वो जो लेगेसी है वो आगे बढ़ेगी. ये बहुत ज़रूरी है.
This legacy question, I would like to put it slightly differently. When we use the term post-truth, exactly what is meant by post-truth? It's not a war which is going on between what is true and what is not true. We have now entered a space where I hold on to something, knowing fully well that it is a lie. You said, what is it that we have to preserve? We have to preserve, first of all, the conscience. What is the conscience of the city called Delhi? Or is it just dispersal? Where do we go back? What are the accounts of 1857 that we have to study? Why do I choose to become a singer? Because I see too much of desolation all around me. The politics frightens me. I became a singer in the late 70s. I became a singer in the late 70s because of what I saw was going wrong. There was too much going wrong. And the early 80s, which finally resulted in 84, too much going wrong. That we have not recovered from. After that, you had, that thing became escalated into too many other things. Leading up to 1992. Leading up to 2002. So in that sense, I don't even think of myself as a musician. I think of myself as somebody who's sad and who's trying desperately to look for those corners where I can stand and say that my existence is not a waste. Come together and let's sort of, rebuild the edifice that we've lost.
तो मेरी भी बहुत खोज है, जो मैं बहुत इंस्पायर होता हूँ मदन सर से. इनके साथ काम करके सबसे अच्छी बात यह है, चार यार के साथ काम करके आपको बहुत सारी चीज़ें सीखने को मिलती हैं. और यही क्वालिटी है जो मदन सर ने बोला कि हमारा बैंड कभी टूटा नहीं. उसकी वजह यही है कि हम चारों एक दूसरे को एडमायर बहुत करते हैं ऑन द स्टेज. लेग पुलिंग खूब करते हैं एक दूसरे की. हम लोग.
And also we are so good friends off the stage. We hang around. I mean हमारे जो म्यूजिक कम होता है, बातचीत, हाँ, मतलब जोक्स, मजाक, ये सब थोड़ा ज़्यादा होता है, थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा होता है, ठीक है.
बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाता है. I can't tell you. But the good thing is, for instance, I'll tell you.
No, also advantage ये भी है कि I don't know anything about Sarod. Thank God. He doesn't know anything about guitar. Thank God. Because if you knew, then you will keep finding, like, I keep joking with him that कल आ जाना रियाज के लिए. I'll teach you some tabla. I don't know anything about tabla.
इस बगिया के भेद ना खोलो.